Hello everybody, Dr. Said is here. Today I'm going to talk about the anatomy of the eyeball. So have you thought that how do you see your environment? How do you see the object? How do you see different colors, different faces? How do you see the sunrise? So today I'm going to show you the anatomy of the eyeball, and I'm going to dig into the different layers of the eyeball. And one by one I'm going to show you, and I'm going to use this anatomy model. I'm going to use this this beautiful drawing. So as you know, the eyeball sits into the eye socket or orbital cavity. This bony structure has pyramidal shape. Please see the previous video that I showed you about the bony orbit or orbital cavity. So it houses the eyeball. So the eyeball is a spherical shaped structure, and it has three different layers. So from the most superficial to deepest, we have the outer layer, middle layer, and inner layer. Outer layer in this drawing represents in blue. So, and as you see here, the most posterior one is really wide, and it makes the posterior 5, 6, and it's known as the sclera. So this is the sclera. So sclera is responsible for the white color of your eyeball. So as you see here, this white color is known as the sclera. And anteriorly, this anterior projection is known as the cornea. So the outer layer made up of sclera, posterior 5, 6 is sclera, anterior 1, 6 is cornea. So why it is called fibrous layer? So these two structures under the microscope, they contain lots of collagen fibers. That's why it is known as the fibrous layer. So sclera is really thick, and it contains lots of collagen fibers, and it provides this spherical shape of the eyeball. It also protects the inside structures inside the eyeball. It also gives attachment to the muscles. As you see here, we have lots of muscles. I'm going to provide a video about the muscles. So the sclera gives attachment to the extraocular muscles, or muscles outside the eyeball. What about the cornea? So if you look at here, cornea is a glass-shaped structure, projects anteriorly, and it's transparent. It looks like a glass. There is no vessels. It's called avascular structure. There is no vessels, so it allows large amount of light passing through. So it's called cornea. So here is the cornea. This is the sclera. The middle layer that is represented in pink, it is called, this one is called the vascular layer. So outermost layer is the fibrous layer. Middle layer is known as the vascular layer. Why? Vascular means vessels. It contains lots of vessels, arteries and veins. And it's comprised of three different parts. The posterior part is really wide, and it's called the choroid. And this projection here, it is known as the ciliary body, and anteriorly this diaphragm-shaped structure is called iris. Choroid, ciliary body, and iris. So I'm going to show you on the model. So as I mentioned earlier, this white color is the sclera. This glass shape is cornea. This is the outer layer or fibrous layer. Deep to this, we have middle layer or vascular layer. As you see, we have lots of vessels. It's made up of three different parts. I can show you here. So the posterior wide area is known as the choroid, and this projection contains lots of muscles. It's called the ciliary body. We have ciliary muscles here. If you look at closely, you can see here some muscles. And this diaphragm shaped structure here that is responsible for the colorful part of your eyeball is the iris. In the middle of the iris, we have an opening. It's called the pupil. So as you know, the pupil, this space is pupil. So pupil allows a specific amount of light to pass through. So what is the function of the choroid? So as you see here, it contains lots of vessels. It's supplying the sclera, and outer part of the deepest layer is the retina. And what about the ciliary body? So ciliary body contains ciliary muscles and ciliary muscles connecting to the lens via the zonular fiber. So if you look at here, we have the lens. Just this area is known as the lens. This is the lens. So as you see here, the ciliary processes connecting to the lens via these blue lines, they are known as the zonular fibers. So zonular fibers, it looks like a ligament-shaped structure. So you can see here this white color is the zonular fibers. They are connecting the ciliary processes to the lens. So it sits here behind the iris and pupil. We have the lens. What is the function of the ciliary muscles into the ciliary body? So they are smooth muscle. You know, we have different muscles in our body. We have skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So smooth muscle, they are involuntary. They are under the control of the autonomic nervous system, specifically parasympathetic fibers coming here and stimulating the ciliary muscles. So it's important because the ciliary muscles are responsible for the near vision and far vision. So if you want to see the near objects, you need to contract your ciliary muscles. So parasympathetic fibers from the cranial nerve 3. I'm going to provide a video next week about the parasympathetic fibers. So parasympathetic fibers of the cranial nerve 3 oculomotor stimulating. So under this stimulation, the ciliary muscles contract. So it becomes enlarged. When it becomes enlarged, so obviously the zonular fibers relax. When the zonular fibers relax, the lens becomes more spherical. So it allows you to see the near objects. It's called near vision. Opposite to this, in the absence of the parasympathetic stimulants, these ciliary muscles relax. So it becomes a little bit small. When it becomes small, the zonular fibers tensed. So when the zonular fibers tense, the lens becomes more flat for the far vision. So near vision, far vision, this mechanism is known as the accommodation. So the function of the ciliary muscles plus zonular fibers and lens is accommodation. See the near vision and far vision. So what about the iris? So I can show you here the iris. Here is the iris, the colorful area of the eyeball is the iris, and as you see here, we have the pupil. So iris again contains some smooth muscle, two different smooth muscle. Some of them are just at the edge of the pupil. They are really circular shaped smooth muscle, and they act like a sphincter. I mean, when they contract, act like a sphincter, they are just decreasing the diameter of the pupil. So it's called sphincter pupillae. The other muscles that are not really circular, they are just extending laterally like this. So they are dilator pupillae. So dilator means dilation. When they contract, they can increase the diameter of the pupil, and it allows more light to pass through the pupil. So we have two different types of smooth muscle in our iris, sphincter pupillae and dilator pupillae. So again, they are under the control of the parasympathetic and sympathetic. Sphincter pupillae under the control of the parasympathetic. Dilator pupillae is under the control of the sympathetic. So when you are resting and relaxed, so you don't need more light, you are gonna close your eyes and your pupils needs to be decrease the diameter of the pupil, so you need parasympathetic. So during the rest and digestion, parasympathetic usually stimulates. When the parasympathetic stimulates, these sphincter pupillae contracts and decrease the pupil, so less amount of light passing through. Opposite to this, during the fight or flight, for example, if you are excited, if you are scared, if you are doing exercise, you need more light. So the sympathetic nerves stimulates the dilator pupillae and they increase the diameter of the pupil, so more amount of the light can pass through the pupil. And histologically, there are some pigmented structure here into your iris that is responsible for the colorful part of your eyeball as well. So this is the second layer. What about the third layer? So the third layer that is represented in green, it is called the nervous layer. It contains some neural cells or neural layer. So it's known as the retina. Retina, neural layer. So from the superficial to deepest, we have the fibrous layer, vascular or uveal layer, uvea, and finally neural layer or nervous layer, it's called the retina. So retina is this pink area. If you look at closely, this pink layer, innermost layer is called the retina. So retina contains different neurons, contains the photoreceptors. If you take a cross section through this, I can show you here another drawing. So you can see here different layers of the retina. From the outermost or deepest layer, we have pigmented layer. Here is known as the pigmented layer. We have pigmented cells here. And then we have the photoreceptors, and then you can see the bipolar cell layers and ganglionic cell layers. So if you look at here, the light, the pink shows the way of the light. So when the light passing through the pupil and then passing through this, the cornea and then pupil and then lens, and it gets into the retina. So the light passing through all these layers, and then pigmented layer contains lots of pigment, and it traps the light and it prevents the light to pass through to get into the outer layers. So when the light traps here, it can excite or stimulate the photoreceptors. We have two different types of the photoreceptors. They are called the rod and cones. So the pink one is the rod, the blue one is the cones, two different photoreceptors. So the light can excite these two types of photoreceptors. After excitation, the signal passing through the bipolar cells and stimulates the ganglionic cells, and then the signal passing through the axons of the ganglionic cells and exit the eyeball as the optic nerve. So it's weird. So light needs to pass through all those layers to trap here via this pigmented layer, and then it excites and stimulates the photoreceptors and the signal passing back through the bipolars and ganglionic cells and exiting the eyeball through the axons of the ganglionic cells. So look at here, we have 1 million ganglionic cells. 1 million axons of the ganglionic cells come together and make the optic nerve or cranial nerve too. So here we have the optic nerve. So it's exiting the eyeball. Here at the back we have the eyeball. I'm gonna show you here. So it would be here at this area. So it's exiting the eyeball and carrying those signals back to the brain. Yeah, this is the way of the light and the way of the excitation. They are opposite to each other. And just keep in mind this, the retina ends up here in this curly line. It's called serrated ora serrata. So actually these 3 layers stops there in the ora serrata, but the pigmented layer continues and it lines the ciliary body and it lines posteriorly the iris. So it's called the non-sensory part of the retina. So the sensory part is here, and the non-sensory is the pigmented layer, is continuous and just lining the ciliary muscles, ciliary body and the iris posteriorly.
So as I showed you here, we have the retina, the pink showing the retina. So it contains lots of photoreceptors, rods and cones. At the back, this white color is known as the optic disc, the axons of the ganglionic cells exiting the retina and eyeball totally from this point, optic disc, and makes the optic nerve. So here is the optic disc, this is the optic nerve. There is no photoreceptors in the optic disc. That's why it is called blind spot. A little bit lateral to the optic disc, we have a spot here. It's called the macula lutea. Macula lutea means the yellow spot. At the center, there is a depression. If you look at closely, there is a depression. It's called fovea centralis. So within the macula lutea, and specifically fovea centralis, we have lots of cones photoreceptors that is really important for the acuity vision.
Yeah, this is the anatomical structures of the eyeball. I just tried to simplify it for you. Now I'm going to focus on the spaces here. So you know we have some spaces here, there, and this big space here. So look at here, just anterior to the lens, we have anterior segment. Posterior to the lens, we have posterior segment. Anterior segment subdivided into anterior chambers and posterior chambers. Here is the anterior chambers. Each subdivision happens by the iris. So anterior chamber is in between the cornea and the iris. Posterior chamber is between the iris and lens. And here is the posterior segment. What do we have into these 2 anterior and posterior chambers? We have watery fluid. It's called aqueous humor. Aqueous humor. So aqueous humor, it's producing and releasing by the ciliary processes here, there. So ciliary processes, this depression between the ciliary processes, they are producing aqueous humor, and then aqueous humor coming down, passing through the posterior chamber, and then passing through the pupil, getting into the anterior chamber, and then back here. What do we have here? Here we have some plexus, venous plexus. It's called Schlemm, canal of Schlemm. So it drains into this canal of Schlemm. It's turning over, it's producing and then passing and releasing into this canal of Schlemm and then back to the venous, the veins of around the eyeball. So it's a watery fluid, like a water, so light can pass through. What about this area? The posterior segment is filled with jelly-shaped structure. It's called vitreous body. Vitreous body. Anteriorly, we have aqueous humor. Posteriorly, we have vitreous body. Aqueous humor is a watery fluid. vitreous body is jelly-shaped structure. Both of them are transparent. Both of them allow the light to pass through. So light can pass through this glass shape, the cornea, and then pass through the watery fluid, aqueous humor, can pass through the pupil, can pass through the lens, and then it can pass through this vitreous body to focus on the retina. So here we have from anterior to posterior, we have these 4 avascular structures. From anterior to posterior, we have the cornea, aqueous humor, pupil, lens, vitreous body. So they allow the light to pass through to focus on the retina. So this is all about the eyeball. If you have any question, please put your questions into the comments and receive the feedback. Thank you so much for your attention.